everyone, my name's Amber Coronado, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about my 2 worship experiences this semester in our world religion class. I'll also be talking a little bit about what happened in those experiences and contrasting them, and then talking about overall what I learned and took away from this course. My first experience was at a Jewish synagogue here in Fort Worth. It was called Ahavat Shalom Synagogue on Hewland Street, and Ahavat is a conservative synagogue, and I attended their Tuesday 6 p.m. minyan service. It's a really short 20-minute service. It was very nice, the entire service, with the exception of the greeting and at the beginning and the end is in Hebrew. So if there is somebody that is looking to go to this service, just get there a little early so you can familiarize yourself with the Bibles that are provided in the pews. They are a little different because they go back to front in their readings, and so it's just a little bit hard to kind of adjust to if you're not prepared for it, and I wasn't. I was pleasantly surprised because I was expecting it to be a rabbi, and there was a cantor, which is a woman, who led all the prayers for the service. She had her back towards us for the majority of the service, and their service, for the most part, from what I could understand, were prayers, and they were kind of sung. They weren't really said, but sung. So it was kind of, I thought it was really beautiful. And then, let's see, the majority of the service were older people. There weren't more than 10 people in the entire service, myself included. And like I said earlier, it only lasted for about 20 minutes. So when I realized that I was utterly lost and that it wasn't in English, I kind of just sat in my pew and observed and tried to be respectful, as I obviously didn't know the responses to any of what they were saying. But when I left, it was just really nice, and I found myself wanting to go to a longer service, maybe their Shabbat service on Friday nights, because I've heard they're significantly longer and not just the 20-minute prayer service. But I have not gotten around to doing that just yet. So my second worship experience was initially going to be to a Buddhist temple. I really wanted to go in a different direction than anything that I had gone than I had done at all or even experienced in the past. So that was my initial choice, but then the opportunity presented itself to me to go to a Seventh-day Adventist church in Joshua, and I initially kind of just didn't really want to until I spoke to somebody and kind of learned a little bit about a little bit more about Seventh-day Adventists and how really different they are from Catholics, because I'm Catholic. So I went ahead and went, and I was going to meet my friend who attends that church. And so when I arrived to the church, it looks like it would be in a rural setting. The church itself, it's a large white building. I thought it was really cute. And when I walked in, I was walking in with other people and immediately noticed that the congregation was very mixed as far as age went. It was really diverse. There were older people that were walking in with middle-aged, with younger. Some people had kids, some people had teenagers. It was kind of all over the place. When I first walked in the doors, there was a long hallway where people were just standing and congregating and just talking about their weekend and their day, and it was really nice. It was really welcoming. It didn't seem like a church that I have ever experienced. So for probably about the first 10 minutes, because I got there early, I walked around the hallway and the church that everybody else was at, looking at pictures that were hung on the walls. There were paintings and actual pictures that all had kind of scriptures written underneath them. None of the scriptures were ones that I was familiar with, but they were scriptures nonetheless. And so then I kind of made my way into the worship area that they actually had, and it was, my first thought was that it was significantly larger than the Jewish synagogue that I attended, and also at the same time just a completely different shape than my church itself. So I sat in a pew. It was kind of in a fan shape, actually, now that I think about it, in a fan shape versus kind of the square rectangular shape that I'm kind of used to, and that was also present at the conservative Jewish synagogue. So I sat down in a pew in the center area, and immediately noticed there was a really large stage with kind of like a band set up. There was also a large projector screen that was hanging down with the readings that were going to be in the Mass or during the Mass. And so then people started funneling in and started having a seat, and I noticed people taking out their Bibles and their hymnals that were provided in the pew. So I did the same thing, and everything everything that was going to be read during the service was up on that projector screen, so I was able to really navigate where I was going. The music was really upbeat. They sang a couple of pop songs that were really familiar from a couple of years ago. So I was able to sing along to them, even though I am not Seventh-day Adventist. They were really welcoming. They had kind of a children's story time where they called all the kids in the congregation up to the front, and there were all ages. There were teenagers, middle schoolers, elementary school kids. There was even a woman that walked up with her, looked like a newborn, walked up to the front of the congregation and stood there while they read a story, and then they asked the kids questions about the story. And I cannot remember what the story was, but it was along the lines of the giving tree. So it was very relatable, and they asked the kids questions, and I thought that was really nice because the kids gave really honest answers to all the questions they were asking. And then they went into the sermon, and the sermon was a little long, and he did a little bit of reading from the Bible, and then he did a lot of preaching. I, to be honest, cannot remember specifically what he spoke about, what the reading was about, and it's probably more because I was a little taken back, because he seemed to be kind of scaring the congregation in some senses. And there was a lot of responses, so I was a little distracted, and more just taking in what everybody else was doing and what the members of the congregation were doing, because they all had very strong reactions to everything that the pastor was saying. There were a lot of responses, and it seemed that was welcomed. They wanted for them to respond however they felt necessary. And then when the service was over, there was more songs. They were very upbeat, and then they offered for everybody to attend a reception afterwards. And to the best of my knowledge, because I was greeted and welcomed afterwards to go to the reception, most of the congregation actually attended. I unfortunately had to leave. And so those were my two experiences. Very, very different from each other, and also very different from my own experiences in my own religion. The Jewish synagogue had an older congregation. The service that I went to, it was a 20-minute congregation that was in Hebrew, and or a 20-minute service that was in Hebrew. And that differs from my congregation, which is mixed of all different ages and families, and we are also really conservative, but it's a different type of conservative. There is speaking, there is preaching. It's in English. We have singing, but also just the way the service is actually said is different, because at Ahavat Shalom they sing their actual sermons, and at my church they speak, and then we have songs. Also, my church and my Catholic faith differs from the SDA, Seventh-day Adventist Church, because we have very conservative songs and a very conservative method of praying and prayer, and it's very ritualistic in our preaching and in the way we worship. And that's very different from how they were doing it at the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Also, the congregation there was different. They were like mine, from all different types of families, different ages, but they differed from mine and the conservative Jewish synagogue, because they obviously were not very conservative, but also because their songs were upbeat. It was very obvious that they were really trying to engage the youth in, not necessarily in a ritual or in a tradition, but more into what they were saying. And that was very refreshing to me. I really enjoyed being able to watch and kind of see how other people do and pray. So I was so happy with the overall experience in this class and what I was able to take away, and really that we were kind of made to do this kind of experiment as a whole, to visit other religious places of worship and kind of contrast and see how the other side of things are. This entire course has really given me a new way of looking at religions. I've always been really interested in it, and I've always thought of myself to be a really open-minded person. I have friends from all different religions, and I accept them all and love them all the same. Always been very, very intrigued, and really I felt that the entire message of this entire course was acceptance, and that realistically our differences really aren't that different, that we all worship a God and or a higher being, and even those that don't, that really acceptance is what's needed across the board. You have to accept and be open-minded to what other people are doing and what other people are praying about, in order to really be happy and really to even be able to gauge your own religions. Because if you don't know what else is out there, then how do you know that what you are praying and what you are doing is really the right choice for you? I thoroughly enjoyed this class. I would just like to thank our professor, Dr. Kendra Irons, for being such an amazing professor. Thank you for being so understanding and so open with us, and for really allowing us to experience and to really explore the world's religions. Your feedback is invaluable. Thank you so much.